Little Nightmares 2, A Tale of Shadows and Echoes. A deep, eerie hum filled the air. The world was silent, save for the sound of rustling leaves and distant, unknown noises. In the middle of a vast, twisted forest, a boy lay still, curled in the damp grass. His small frame shivered as he awoke. His face was hidden beneath a crude paper bag, its torn eye holes barely revealing his cautious gaze. His name was Mono. He didn't know how he got here. His memories were fogged, the world around him warped, as if caught between reality and nightmare. The towering trees bent unnaturally, their roots clawing the earth like fingers. Rusting cages dangled from branches, swaying gently in the wind, the contents inside long decayed. Instinct told Mono one thing: he had to move. Through the woods he wandered, climbing over fallen logs and avoiding open traps littered with decayed carcasses. Then he saw it, a house, old and rotting, standing alone in the wilderness. Something inside called to him. The hunter. The house was silent, but the air inside was thick with decay. Flies buzzed over rotting food, and the wooden floors creaked under Mono's small footsteps. In a dimly lit room, he found her, locked behind wooden planks. Her frightened eyes darted up at him, wary but hopeful. Her name was Six. Mono helped her escape, and together they crept through the eerie house. But then they heard it, the slow, heavy breathing of something unnatural. A hulking hunter loomed in the next room, wearing a crude sack over his head. He worked silently, butchering something unrecognizable on his wooden table. The moment they tried to escape, he heard them. Gunshots shattered the silence as he fired his shotgun, the blast ripping through the wooden walls. Mono and Six ran, their small feet barely keeping up as they ducked, crawled, and leaped over fallen logs. Then they reached a swamp, its murky waters offering cover. They hid beneath the surface, their lungs burning as the hunter's eerie footsteps passed just above them. Finally, they made it to a wooden shack. Working together, they grabbed a loaded shotgun, aimed it at the door, and fired. The hunter fell. For a moment, the world was still. Then Mono and Six climbed onto a makeshift raft and drifted away, the mist swallowing the forest behind them. Through the dense fog, they saw it. The city. Buildings leaned precariously, their windows dark. The air buzzed with static, a strange hum vibrating through the air. The source? A distant transmission tower, its pulsating signal warping the very fabric of reality. Mono and Six ventured deeper into the city. The streets were lifeless, filled with static-faced figures who sat frozen, their hollow eyes glued to flickering television screens. They didn't move, didn't speak, as if they had forgotten how to exist outside of the screen. The teacher's domain. The school halls were empty, yet filled with an eerie presence. The walls were lined with faded portraits, the eyes of the painted figures following their every move. Then came the bullying laughter. The school was home to porcelain children, twisted, doll-like students with cracked faces and hollow, cruel eyes. They were aggressive, their movements unnatural. But worse than them was the teacher. Tall, unnaturally thin, with a stretched-out serpentine neck. She moved through the school with calculated grace, her head twisted and stretched around corners, searching for them with eerie patience. Mono and Six barely escaped her, hiding in lockers and vents before making their final escape through a broken window. The city, however, had more horrors waiting. The Hospital of Shadows. The hospital was abandoned, yet alive. Wheelchairs stood still in the corridors, yet the shadows moved on their own. The walls pulsed as if the building itself was breathing. And then the mannequins came to life. They only moved when unseen, frozen in place under direct light. But the moment darkness fell, they twitched, crawled, and reached out. In the depths of the hospital, they found him, a grotesque doctor, his swollen body crawling across the ceiling, his face twisted in a permanent, unsettling grin. He hunted them, his wheezing breaths filling the air. But in the end, Mono and Six trapped him inside an incinerator. As the flames consumed him, his twisted screams faded into the silence. But something worse was waiting. The thin man Mono felt it again. The pull. The televisions whispered to him, their static buzzing inside his mind. Then, the screen rippled. A tall, faceless figure in a long coat and wide-brimmed hat stepped out. The thin man, his very presence distorted reality, stretching the walls, bending time. He reached for Mono, his fingers elongating unnaturally. Mono tried to run. The thin man kidnapped Six, leaving Mono alone. However, Mono discovers he has the ability to manipulate televisions and fights the thin man using his own powers, ultimately defeating him. He then reaches the signal tower, where he finds Six. Mono awoke in a twisted version of reality. The city had changed. The sky was drenched in static, the world itself shifting like a broken signal. He then reaches the signal tower, where he finds Six, now transformed into a monstrous, distorted version of herself. She had been twisted, mutated into a monstrous, elongated form, her body warped by the tower's influence. Mono realizes that to save Six, he must destroy the music box, even though doing so will cause her pain. After an emotional and intense fight, Mono succeeds in breaking the music box, freeing Six from the tower's control. Six returns to her original form, weak and confused. Mono reaches out to her, offering his hand. Six takes it, and together they begin to escape as the tower begins to collapse around them. As they run toward the exit, the ground beneath them gives way. Six leaps across a gap and lands on the edge of a collapsing platform. Mono jumps after her, but barely catches the ledge beneath her. Six reaches down, their fingers brushing. For a moment, it seems like she's going to pull him up. But then, her expression changes. Her eyes darken. Her grip loosens. Mono's eyes widen in disbelief. He looks up at her, silently pleading. Six's expression was unreadable. Fear, regret, or something else. Mono fell. The darkness swallowed him whole. Alone in the abyss, Mono did not scream. He simply sat, waiting. Time stretched. His small body grew taller. His hands clenched into fists. And then, he became the Thin Man. The nightmare never ended. It only began again.